Find out how Jodi Brown, the CAO for the town of Bonaccord, and her team got a big win by finding an affordable and environmentally friendly approach for a major infrastructure project on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And before we get started, I'd just like to say how grateful I am to produce this show. Not only do I get to spend precious time with so many talented leaders who share their biggest success stories, I also get a ton of wonderful feedback from listeners just like you, who have been enjoying the show and using it to become better leaders. It is a real privilege. On today's episode, you'll learn how Jodi Brown, the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Bonaccord, and her team found an affordable and environmentally friendly way to execute a major stormwater drainage project. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Executive Wins Workshop. In this high-impact workshop, executive teams learn how to reverse engineer past wins in a structured way so they can get more wins in the future. This highly interactive session is for senior leadership teams who really want to improve profitability, processes, communication, and a whole lot more. I'll be your facilitator, bringing 25 plus years of experience and a proven system that you can learn to improve the overall results in your business. It's available in half-day, full-day, and customizable formats, and it's really great for team building and corporate retreats. There's also an in-depth version called a Wins Audit, and this is when I interview people from all levels of a company to find out how they get their wins, and then I deliver a summary to the executive team. And because I'm not in the family, the results are real. So if you're an executive who really wants to find out how people in your company get their wins, and then also get analysis about whether or not these wins are aligned with your strategy, then visit executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Jodi Brown, the CAO for the town of Bonaccord, located in Alberta, Canada. With a population of 1,500, this is a community that has to make effective choices, especially when it comes to executing major infrastructure projects. In this episode, Jodi shares a win that all municipalities can learn from. Her town needed to do a major upgrade to manage stormwater drainage in order to prevent flooding and a whole lot more. But when Jodi and her team initially went to market to find a solution, the early quotes, well, they were just too high. But the project still needed to be done. And with that in mind, Jodi and her team did the research and worked their networks to find a more affordable and environmentally friendly solution. And before we get into it, I just want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created. It's called The Anatomy of a Win. It's a proven 5-step process to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win you hear on this show. My hope is that you can adapt this format to reverse engineer one of your past wins, and then you can use this structure to consistently get more business wins in the future. And now here's Jodi Brown with her executive win. Welcome to the show. It is great to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Jodi, a lot of people aren't going to know who you are. So, if you could introduce yourself and let us know about your role and what that kind of encompasses, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. So my name's Jodi Brown. I'm the town manager for the town of Bonaccord. I've been here for about 3 years now. And my job's very busy. I have a very busy role here. And anyone else who's a town manager or a CAO will certainly understand that. We juggle pretty much everything on a daily basis from an operations perspective. So we take direction from council and implement council's vision on a daily basis. So love the work. It's a great job, lots of fun. And I'm here to talk a little bit about that today in more detail.
Yeah, and never a dull moment, right? For a chief administrative officer, it just it never slows down. It's so fun to look at a bit of your pedigree there on your LinkedIn profile as well. Mm-hmm. You've earned your way up to this role through multiple different places. So I can't even imagine if we had sort of hours and hours today, we would talk about all those different things that you've come into. But luckily, again, one of the ways we kick this off is to say, tell us about one of your favorite wins And if you could describe it for us, that'd be great.
For sure. So one of my favorite wins recently is just working on a stormwater park project. And so often people don't think of stormwater as super exciting, but for us, it has been a really, really good project that we're, excited to share with the community at large today who might be watching this. So the town of Bonaccord has a wetlands area that has been, it's a permanent wetland, so it's been a part of the community for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, what we've started to see in the last, say, 10 years or so is some flooding issues with it. And also the bottom is starting to fill with sludge, and it's making less room and less capacity for stormwater management. And so initially we looked at doing a traditional storm water facility, and that cost was anywhere from, I think, 13 to 22 million, which for a community of 1,500 people is really, not very feasible. And so we started to really look around at other opportunities. And I think, as I've mentioned before in talking with you, Gord, one of the things we thought about is there has to be a better way. There has to be a more feasible way. And so in speaking with colleagues and speaking with different experts in the field, we were able to discover a new option called a naturalized storm park. And so we're excited about that. It's a nature-based solution, and it will ultimately lead to better overall stormwater management as well as park amenity for our community. And it also revitalizes the nature aspect of a wetland. So the species living there, from birds to any other animal species that are living in that area, will have a much better habitat and environment for them as well. So we're excited about that part of it. It cleans out the water with filters too, so that will allow us to irrigate. So that way that water can be used in the event of a drought, which we're starting to see in Alberta more and more. We could use that water to actually, water our sports fields or water our flowers, or even local farmers might be able to use it. So really excited about the outcome of this project.
How remarkable. There's so many things to kind of break down in there. And again, in your role, you would see all kinds of proposals and possibilities. And I'm going to guess, it's funny. I want to get into the structure of what I call the anatomy of a win to start this conversation off. And maybe I'll use that structure to, sort of get to some of the things that I'm really interested in talking to you about. The anatomy of a win, the way I describe it is, what was the strategy? What was the work plan? Who are the people involved? What was the operational component? And what results did you kind of get at the end? I'll start at the strategy level. And you mentioned it really clearly. There's a reality to infrastructure investment for anybody. And, strategically, you were faced with an issue that just didn't fit in there. There wasn't going to be a possibility of say, doing it in that traditional way, based on the dollar amounts that you were quoted early on. Strategically, then, what was the strategy to go and find this other better solution?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I realized I didn't mention that the cost for this new approach is actually significantly less. We're looking at 5 to 6 million instead of 13 to 22. So that was one of the key factors. And then, of course, you put in the environmental benefits as well. However, to get back to your question on strategy, so my strategy was really to talk to people, talk to my colleagues. There's, lots of expertise out there from my other CAO colleagues and even municipal managers at the senior level. And in doing that, talking with them, I was able to connect with a engineering firm, Magna Engineering, and they had a new approach that I had heard about from my other CAO colleagues and how effective it was and how well it was working for them. And so I reached out to that engineering firm, and they came forward with this additional option for us to consider. And so that has been just fantastic to work with them and have their expertise to look at a new and different way of approaching things.
For other leaders that are listening, that strategy of reaching out to your network, how important is this is one issue that you've solved, but how important is sort of the maintaining that network for you in terms of helping you, I'm sure, with other issues as well?
Oh, it's critical. we all work in the same field, and often we're all experiencing the same challenges. So being sure to have those connections and speak with your colleagues at conferences, and even just reaching out to them by email or phone to say, hey, I see that you're, doing this really cool project, and I'm wondering if you could tell me about it. That is really valuable in itself. And I've done that more than once for a number of different issues. And I find that I always get a really positive response. People are willing to help and willing to share their knowledge and expertise and successes. And so that's always a benefit. And I would encourage anyone to do that.
Well, it's funny in strategy, like when I facilitate strategic planning, there's always talking about your vision, mission, values. It sounds like the people that you're reaching out to share values. That value of, moving that information around, making each other successful, sort of floating all the boats. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And like you alluded to earlier, municipal government is certainly challenging. We always have a lot of different and unique situations that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And so being able to have that support network with your colleagues is really important. And many, many times over the years, I've found that to be a huge resource for me as even a senior manager or a chief administrative officer, to be able to reach out to others in the field and ask their thoughts and their experiences to learn from.
So very intentional to have that strategy in place, to have the network, to know that when you come up against something, an issue, you've got someone to reach out to. So very intentional on the strategy side. The second part of the anatomy of a win that I would call is what I'll call the work plan. So there's a practical part to this. So the what, who, and the when. How did you reach out to that network? How many meetings did you have to have? Like really kind of break it down detail-wise for me, because again, I think other leaders can learn from that as well.
Sure. Well, I didn't really have a formal work plan, to be honest. And maybe, if you are very, very busy, like I do find I'm very busy, sometimes it doesn't have to be that formalized. You can sit down and create a work plan and specific outcomes and strategies. But all I did was talk to the person next to me at a conference, to be honest, and got them to tell me more about their experience with a similar but different issue. And they referred me to Magna Engineering as a possible resource for us to speak with. And so from that conversation, I did speak with the representative from that company and had a really good feeling about some of the things that they were sharing with me. And so it was really that simple. Talk to the people next to you at a conference. It helps. And then also, even if you're in municipal government, you're familiar with the trade shows that are at all of our conferences. And so I went from engineering firm to engineering firm to engineering firm and asked the same question. And that's another strategy, I guess. So mine was less formal, more informal. And I just reached out and asked a lot of questions of anyone who I thought may have some background or some experience to help us out. So really talk to a lot of people, ask a lot of questions. That's all I did for my strategy.
Keep talking, keep asking the questions. It's funny about the work plan. There's a bit of, I'm going to say, semi-formalness in this, because there's that idea of being intentional to go to the conference. That's sort of intentional.
Yeah.
And then there's actually, when you're at the conference, being intentional kind of when you're there. So it's remarkable for me about when I'm working through this anatomy of things that people have these things in there. And again, I'm trying to point out the ways, the specific details that other people can go to their next conference and make sure that they, one, speak up, like just don't be shy, and then take advantage of all those different, things that are there. And how nice to have a big pool of engineers to talk to, because you wouldn't have gotten the same answer from each engineering firm. Is that fair?
No, yeah, that's very fair. In fact, some actually pointed me in the direction of Magna Engineering when I asked the question. So I think that there's a lot of, they have a good network amongst themselves as well as engineers, and that helped us connect to their firm, because they are very specific to stormwater, from what I understand, and so that was helpful. And definitely don't be afraid to approach people. I find that people are often really open to being asked and very willing to share their stories and share any advice or expertise that they have. And so definitely I would encourage people to do that.
I love it. And there's that moment when you're talking, with an engineering firm that may not have the solution, but you have the ability to sort of, get through that conversation and maybe ask that right question of like, well, you can't help me, but do you know somebody? There's something like that kind of
Yeah.
exchange going on, or maybe they
Yeah.
brought it up or whatever. But that's that piece that we can actually be active about kind of going forward. Good. So we've got sort of the strategy, the work plan of sorts, semi-formal that you might call it. There's a bunch of people involved in pulling off a win like this. And let's just start with you. There's sort of you, if we had to describe it, right? And there's something about you in this moment in time where you get these early quotes, it's unacceptable. What happened for you, sort of internally, in a sense, in dealing with this problem that was a factor? Like, what was your attitude towards it in a sense?
Well, I don't give up easy. I'm not somebody who gives up very easy. And so I just kept trying to find a feasible solution. And I know that, for example, Bonaccord is very focused on environmental initiatives. And so from that perspective, we were really looking at this is also a wetland. So although our town stormwater tends to drain just from when the town was built many, many years ago, our stormwater just goes that direction towards the wetlands. And so we wanted to take an environmental approach as well. Always, our town has that. Our council is very committed to environmental awareness and initiatives. So that was always in the back of my mind as well, is looking for an option that would support that wetlands as an ongoing environmental area. And so we wanted to make sure that, the wetlands could thrive, is I guess where I'm coming from. We want that for our community. And then the idea of having an amenity and a park for our community was really a big motivator as well afterwards. And so you mentioned other people. So I want to talk a little bit. Also, I have an infrastructure manager that is really excited about this project and very committed to it and sees it as very valuable for the community looking forward to the future in the long term. Just what his comments were is just imagine people driving down the highway and seeing this lovely park and wetlands area in our community, and then also, of course, for our residents. So he was a big driver behind this as well, and I obviously have his support too with this project, being the technical expert, because I am definitely not. I can speak about it at a high level, but this is really his area, so he was a big champion behind this project and still is.
Isn't it fun to sort of, I love the retrospective on this in a sense, because we've got you, someone who doesn't give up easily. How nice to have, you in place. That's pretty neat. And then you've got an enthusiastic sort of technical expert, internally, right? Mm-hmm. Somewhere in there, you got to pitch this up to council. Is that fair that they got to get involved? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. And our council is very supportive. As I said, they have a commitment in our strategic plan to environmental awareness and initiatives. And so they were very excited about this project as well, and obviously supported it as we're moving forward. And I think we have a really wonderful team here between council and administration. We work really well together. We each have a different role, but work really well together. And I think the success of the team is shown in this project.
Interesting. And just to go back to the strategy piece, so you have sort of a strategy for the town, that then this is almost a subset of that strategy. So there is a layer in there of even sort of deeper, because you're driven from that big idea of, the environment as one aspect. That's wonderful. So now we got the internal people, we got the council. Then you had to go to the conference. Someone had to put on the conference to sort of have that happen. There's all the engineering firms that are there. Mm-hmm. And then you ran into this engineering firm. Tell me a little bit about them and their attitude that sort of was a big part of getting this win.
Oh, well, they're fantastic to work with, and I would suggest, anyone could reach out to them for more information about the firm. But they've certainly been really supportive in helping us with grants and helping us with the technical piece, and just really can't say enough good things about them, to be honest. We've had a really good experience working with them. And I don't want to go too much into the technical because it's, not my area, but certainly they were a key factor in helping us to see the value and benefits of this project for our community, and to help us get, excited about this and to share it with our community in a meaningful way.
I love it. And then there's your community. So, I mean, like what I can hear already is there's maybe some farmers that are going to get some access to whatever clean water they can use. You've got the chance to have people walk down your streets where that water is going to benefit things. What are some of the other impacts of this project, and again, who is impacted by it?
Well, so we have started a Parks and Trails Committee as well. And so that committee will be central in helping us to consider where a trail should go around that wetlands area. And I believe, just in speaking with some of the committee members, that they really see that as a huge benefit and would like to see it. We also have a large, well, I shouldn't say a large, but we do have some bird watchers in our community. And I think that we've got a little stand there with some pictures, and one of our local residents took some of those pictures of some of the local birds. And so I think that'll be huge for our community, those that really enjoy bird walking, those that enjoy walking and being out in nature. And we have this natural area right there that's perfect for that. So I think that's another thing that'll be a huge benefit is, yes, there's the stormwater piece, which is really critical to municipal infrastructure, but there's also the quality of life piece where people are able to enjoy their community and have a beautiful park-like setting to walk around. And that's our end goal.
Friends of ours are bird watchers, and they've got that app on the phone where if they're in the woods, they can hear the 4 different types of birds and tell you what they are.
Oh, I know. That's amazing. I wish I had that skill, but I don't.
It's an app. It's on the phone. It's telling you the type of, anyway, it's just super fun. But again, when we talk about, you started with the win. You said we have this project.
Mm-hmm.
The people part is really interesting because we're hearing about, the tenacity that it takes from your end. There's the council support. Now you're going to get these benefits from this win. So many people obviously are affected, and I think that list probably could go on and on if we sort of stayed on that step. But that's just wonderful to hear again how many people have been sort of positively impacted by this win for you and the town. The fourth step in here is operationally. What was in place to allow this win to occur? I'm going to say there's a procurement process of sorts, or a contracting something. There's regulatory aspects. There could be, I'm going to say, internal software tracking. But what were some of the major operational components that allowed this win to occur?
Well, it takes a lot of work on staff part to do the research in terms of what we need to do now going forward. So we are just at the beginning stages. We've completed a feasibility study, and now the next steps will involve, as you mentioned, the procurement process, the planning process, the community engagement process, because there will be more of that forthcoming, and also just understanding what the next steps are from a very technical level. We do have some decisions to make in terms of which options that council would like to go with in terms of finalizing the project. So right now we're just at the engineering stage, and following that would be the first construction stage. So my guess is we have 3 to 5 years left before we would get to actually completing the project.
That's a long haul for a project. That's quite a long time. And again, you've got to make sure it all happens within the legislation, for example, the provincial legislation and the different types of things that are going on there. There might be internal policies, procedures. Are those factors as well?
Definitely. Basically, because we're very small, we have a small staff. And so it would probably be mostly myself and our infrastructure manager that would be doing the oversight, working with engineering teams down the line as well for the project. And so that involves a lot of grant reporting and getting other grants. And we're also looking at actually some different funding support. So there are some foundations and some other organizations across Canada that may fund a project like this because it's new and innovative and environmentally based. So right now we are doing the research to find those opportunities to help offset the cost, so there's as little impact to taxpayers as possible.
It takes forever to track down those grants and those funding sources, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of work, but you know what? It's worthwhile in the end, and it'll really benefit our communities. And that's what we're here. We're here to serve our community and serve our residents. That's what we're here for. And so it does take a lot of time, but I think the end goal is worth it.
It's interesting to hear about how much behind the scenes work it takes, right? So at some point, 5 years from now, someone's going to be bird watching and maybe won't think about it very much because they're going to be enjoying themselves out in nature. In
Yeah.
the meantime, there was 5 years worth that started with tenacity, that got us to a conference, that got us to an engineering firm, that got us to this moment in time where it pulled together and we went through all the granting and we tried to relieve the tax. Like, I love the complexity of this, and it's just so lucky to be with you, sort of at the center of it, to be able to describe the details, again, that I think a lot of people are going to get a chance to learn from. The fifth step in the anatomy part is, how do you measure the result? What sort of things are you measuring to know that it's a success?
Well, once we get to the end of the project, the first goal would be to see better management of stormwater, first off. So to see less flooding, more stormwater capacity, to see our wetlands show signs of revitalization, and also to have the ability potentially to irrigate with that water, whether it's internal use for the town or whether it's another local farmer. Having that opportunity to be able to irrigate would be the third outcome. And then, of course, once we have that park in place that people are able to enjoy, that would be the last outcome that we would use as a measure.
And I heard in there somewhere, if you do the cost-benefit analysis, there's sort of early quotes, maybe getting it half price. Is that another factor?
Oh, definitely. The cost is significantly less than we originally anticipated, and we're just continuing to work towards reducing that cost in terms of impact to ratepayers. And so, as you can imagine, we have a number of infrastructure projects on the go. So it is really important that we try and keep costs down, especially for a small-sized community. There's always roads that needs to be fixed. We have an arena that we're working on updating. So all those other priorities also come into play. So the more funding we're able to get for this project, the better for our local taxpayers. So,
love it. And somewhere in there, the qualitative side is there's some sense of satisfaction. How would you sort of measure your own satisfaction, in a sense, if you had to talk about that?
Well, I always like to, this is my fourth community I've worked in, and in the municipal realm. And so anytime I leave a community after I've been there for some time, I like to be able to know that I made a difference for that community. So for me to be able to move on in my career when I retire and look back and say, oh, that stormwater park looks really awesome and the community really loves it, and it made those outcomes that we talked about earlier happen. And so that to me would be wonderful, to leave that legacy, and I always want to leave a positive legacy. So I think that's where this would come from for me.
This is great. I so appreciate that you've taken the time to come and share this story, again, that I think a lot of other people can learn from. It sounds like it's been satisfying for yourself, and it's in the middle of that journey right now that's going to get over the finish line in 3 to 5 years, but it sounds like you're on your way. And when we hear about an innovative solution like this, isn't that nice to know that there are alternatives to typical ways to do things, and that there's maybe not cutting edge or use of natural things that maybe can be done a little bit better?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And thank you for inviting me here to talk about Bonnecourt today. So
really appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Okay, thank you.
There has to be a better way, and I don't give up easily. Don't you just want a leader like Jodi Brown on your side? And because of her legacy building tenacity, Jodi and her team were able to find a solution that will benefit the town of Bonnecourt for many future generations. What a great win. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our other episodes, which include bringing a cutting-edge medical device to market in the United States, how CEO Kelly Mottet and her team got a win for Mach 32. And if you want to learn the anatomy of a win so you can apply it to get more wins in the future, then check out our workshops at executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. If you enjoyed today's episode, then be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.